It's Loving the Law, episode 3. Loving the Law, where we talk about celebrity, high profile family law cases and also integrate that with family law education so you can get a little bit of your gossip in, but also learn about family law cases. And I'm here with Boyd, paralegal extraordinaire. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. And today we're going to talk about a case out of Alabama. It's involving a sort of, I guess, heir to a coal fortune in Alabama, Christopher Drummond, and his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, Alexis Drummond. And I just found out about this case really just scrolling through social media, and it kind of blew up a little bit on social media. And also, I went to law school in Birmingham, Alabama, which these people are from, Birmingham, Alabama. And so a lot of the places that they're talking about, I'm familiar with. So it definitely caught my eye. So let's get into it a little bit.
Let's get into it.
Right. So first we have TPO with a twist. That's the name of our signature drink this week. And it is a... Woo!
Heavy on what?
Woo, we need a mixologist probably to help us out a little bit. And also, any drink suggestions for our signature drink of the week, feel free to send to campaneropodcast@gmail.com. But this one, what does that have in it? It's got vodka, lime twist,
Club soda.
and watermelon. It's supposed to have basil in it, but we didn't have any. So we may do. But we did get cute cups.
Yes.
These are the cups from my daughter's graduation party at YI.
Recycle.
I did reuse and recycle these cups.
As you should.
Mm-hmm. As I should everything from that graduation party because it was quite the soiree. So I wanted to talk about a lot of the allegations in these court filings and kind of go through how this case started and who these people are. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
So Christopher Drummond he's from Alabama. His father was, in 2015, he was actually named the richest person in the state of Alabama. I think his name is Gary Drummond, but he was some kind of like coal mining, scion, whatever. Coal mining owner. He made his money in coal. And he got a lot of it,
apparently.
And so his son is married to this lady named Alexis Drummond. And apparently they have been going through some stuff. Did you get a chance to look at anything, I guess, online about... I think I sent you some of the Facebook or the Instagram posts about the case and what was going on with that.
You did. It seemed very, very litigious. It's going to be a very litigious divorce case, but it seems like there's a lot of domestic violence going on.
That's right. And a lot of cases start that way. I mean, you remember from working with Kay, a lot of times a divorce case will start with a TPO, which is a TPO is a temporary protective order. And you can get those if there's been an act of domestic violence between people who are married to each other, who have a child together, who have lived together, and who have dated as well.
Yes.
So a lot of times that's how a divorce case starts. There's some kind of domestic violence incident, and one person takes out a TPO against the other person. And you can get a lot of relief from the court in a TPO in a quick period of time.
Correct.
And so I don't love a divorce case that starts with a TPO because a lot of times I think people take advantage of TPOs.
And they think they got the upper hand.
Yeah.
Because they got a TPO.
Right.
So, but in this case.
Right. In this case, I think it's absolutely justified.
Yes.
But, sometimes you have a case where somebody really wants somebody to move out. They don't want to deal with that person anymore, so they take out a TPO. And you draft the paperwork, you file it with a clerk, and you get a hearing, but only the person petitioning for the TPO is present at the hearing. So the other party doesn't get to give their side at the initial hearing.
So it's one-sided.
Right. And so that to me often leads to the judge only getting one version of the story, which sounds horrible. And then when you have your actual hearing where everybody has to have notice and that both parties have to be there, it's a very different story than what the original TPO was.
Right. But in most cases, I feel like, I'm always speaking about our judges because I don't know what they do in other counties. I feel like they do take it pretty serious and they don't just sign off on them.
No, I had a case where someone, the other side, had petitioned for a TPO because, like, the other party didn't want the child to eat a certain meal. And so judges, like, things like that, the judges are good about,
Right.
not signing off on and be like, I'm not going to sign a TPO for that.
This case definitely warrants one.
Right. So these parties, I believe they got married in 2023, but I actually found their, I think their like wedding invitation and their
So this is a
registry.
fresh marriage.
It
actually.
is, but they were together 3 years before that. So I guess they've been together a total of 6 years, but they did
Okay.
not get married until March 11th, 2023. And the ceremony was at 5:00 and it's black tie optional. So I got the details on that.
Quite the investigator you are.
And then they had it looks like a rehearsal dinner at the Grand Bohemian Habitat Rooftop Bar, cocktail attire. So, I mean, it sounds like it was a shishi affair, but it's interesting to me that they actually had this online, that this was on there. And they did not ask for any gifts. They said, if you're,
Interesting.
yeah, which I mean, the guy's got a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like found just drink and be merry and get on the dance
your
floor.
presence at our wedding celebration is more than enough, so please no gifts required. If you are interested in blessing us with a gift, please consider a donation to one of the organizations below that hold a special place in our hearts. So they asked for donations to charity, which,
I like
I like that. Very classy.
I like that. Yes. I know
Um,
why.
I would not expect that it would end the way it has.
Right.
So then, so they're married. I think they have now a 4-month-old child. So you've got children in the mix. And, he's got a lot of money. It doesn't seem like I can't tell that she works necessarily outside of just having a baby because I think the baby's only 4 months old. And they go on this trip to France. And they get into it. There's a domestic violence situation at a hotel in France, which I think is like some extremely shishi hotel in France. And he gets arrested and charged with domestic violence
In a foreign country.
in a foreign country where his family name, I would imagine, is not as well known as it might be in Alabama.
Right.
So he's in a foreign country, and I mean, boy, they gave some swift justice in France.
They don't play.
Apparently not. He served 45 days in Monaco.
Right.
So he had to go to jail. I don't know how they got from him being charged to being in jail that quickly, but it happened.
FAFO.
Right, because that was this year, I think around February, and I think he maybe got out in May. And then came back to the States. And
He was just probably a little bitter and angry when he came back after spending 45 days in a jail in a foreign country.
I was,
Because I can't imagine that their jails are like our jails. I'm sure he didn't have an iPad and access to the internet and all that jazz.
I don't know though. I mean, some foreign countries, their prison is like not that bad. I don't know about France.
Well, it wasn't his his life that he's accustomed to.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to jail in France or anywhere else for that matter. So I don't know what the jail was like, but nobody wants to go to jail.
True.
And then I'm kind of wondering at that point, she didn't move out, I don't think, of the house. And so then he gets out of jail and he comes back. And there's another, it's hard to tell. It seems like there was another assault, or she is using the assault from France to get a protective order and some previous assaults.
Right, maybe some that weren't reported but happened. That's what I was confused about that. I couldn't tell if something happened when he came back or if she was talking about things prior plus the France incident.
Well, and there was a video, because all this is online. Like the reason we're saying that, we think these TPOs are justified and charges are justified. Obviously, this is our opinion. That doesn't mean, it's our opinion only and people are innocent until proven guilty. All that being said, there are videos of these incidents that are online. One of them, I believe, was in May of 2026, so it had to have been after he got out.
Right.
And he's like in the driveway, and I think he says, like he's gonna kill her, and you can hear her kind of like screaming in the background, although you can't really see what's going on.
Right, and let's just clarify something about TPOs. While they are generally granted for some abuse, they can also be granted for someone threatening to do things.
Correct. Yeah. So you say,
him saying I'm going to kill you could also give him a TPO.
Right, but I think he was physical with her because you can kind of hear like smacking.
Yeah, like
noises.
some tussle going on.
Yeah, something's going on in that video. And then there's another video, but this had to have been while she was pregnant, that shows her just kind of laying on the couch, with the dog. That looks like the TV's on. It looks like he's got maybe a drink in front of him. And,
allegedly.
Yeah.
It could be water. It could be vodka.
It looked like it might be brown liquor.
That's liquor.
Yeah, and that's what that looked like. So there was a little bit of brown liquor on the table in a highball. So that could be wrong. And he goes over to her and he's like, if you didn't have this baby in your belly, I'd kill you. It looks like he's trying to I don't know, he's strangling her or definitely going for her throat and putting his hands on her. And she's just kind of sitting there or laying there.
She's pregnant.
Correct.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's not okay.
No, not okay at all.
Not okay. So that would be a crime. In Georgia, it would be a simple battery at the very least. And there is an allegation of a strangulation. But I'm not exactly sure when that happened because it seemed like this was kind of an ongoing thing. And then there's another video where she's sitting there holding her baby, who's, a baby, not old at all. And he kind of goes after her at that point as well.
Which he could then be charged with child endangerment.
Possibly. So there's several different things going on in this case. So you have criminal charges. He has been charged criminally for strangling her. You've got the France charges that he was already convicted of. You've got a TPO, and I believe there's also a divorce file. Now, I tried to pull the documents from Jefferson County, which is the county where they're in Alabama, and I couldn't get anything offline. I don't know if they don't have it there, or I just wasn't looking in the right place, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's not like our peach board. It's not just, they don't have the system that we have.
Right.
Which they might, I just couldn't find it, but ours is, easily accessible, but I couldn't find it either.
There's a lawsuit. She is suing his attorney.
I saw that.
This is kind of wild.
Yes.
So she's suing his attorney for invasion of privacy and I guess theft, but the attorney dog napped her dog.
I'm not really judging. Was the dog and I wouldn't want to give him the dog anyway, so I would have just left.
Well, I wouldn't want somebody who was violent,
right?
An animal.
Yeah. So I need to know before I pick sides in that story. I need to know what she did with that dog. If she napped the dog and then kept the dog, I'm okay with that, maybe, but not if she gave it to him.
Well, it was.
I'm kidding. You really can't do that. I'm just saying. You know how I am about dogs.
But it's just very weird because there is a video of the attorney and some other people, I think, and maybe his cousin or something, walking into the house. And I think they went in the house and went through the house, put cameras inside the house.
That's bizarre. Would you ever do that in a million years?
As an attorney?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, that's bizarre behavior.
I'd leave that craziness up to the client.
Yeah, like,
Well, it brings up an interesting issue. So, now that we are in this age of surveillance, basically, everybody's got a Ring camera, everybody's got house cameras. What do you do in the divorce when, you've got spouses trying to spy on each other?
well, and they have access to the camera. And
Right.
I've actually, this was a friend of mine. It was a situation where, when you're married, something might be in somebody else's name, and the cameras were in his name. So he kept coming in the house with the alarm code, and the alarm company wouldn't change it because it wasn't in her name. Even though it was her separate house, it wasn't the marital residence. It's like they transferred it from the marital residence to her house when she moved. And because it was in his name originally, it just transferred like that. And then so he had full access to cameras and the alarm at all times.
Even though she had exclusive possession of the house.
Yes, only until, and it went on like that until she got a protective order, and then she was able to give them that protective order and change it.
In Georgia, we have what's called an automatic domestic standing order. So if you file for divorce, as soon as you file, the judge issues this order that basically tells everybody you can't sell stuff, you can't transfer bank accounts,
Right.
you can't harass the other person. But it doesn't address that surveillance issue.
Well, I think like right now is the time that this is becoming an issue.
Yeah, we need
And so I feel in the near future that they're going to have to address that because, like you said, they can just spy on each other. And, spouses have your cell phone records. And I mean, it's like they can get into everything for each other. And I do think that cameras are going to be a problem because if I'm going through a divorce, I don't want him watching my every move at my house. That's just weird.
I think that's so
It's scary.
creepy.
It is.
And I do think it's an invasion of privacy. I mean, I just don't think, I'm in my bathroom picking my nose or whatever.
Right.
I don't want somebody watching me.
Right.
I don't care if I'm married to him or not.
Right. And the systems that they can come up with nowadays, they can put cameras all over your house and you'd never see them
Oh,
unless you knew what you were looking for.
They have cameras off Amazon, which I did find this out through a case, but literally just it's like a plug. It looks like the box that you plug your phone into,
Mhm.
right? But it's
A
actually, a cube. So
It's
it's
a
like,
camera.
it's a camera. And those things are $33, clear as day. I mean, you can hear everything, you can see everything.
Wow.
And it's not like you have to pay hundreds of dollars to get this surveillance system. And you can have access to it from
It's
your
fairly
phone.
cheap. The little Ring cameras are fairly cheap.
Yeah.
nowadays.
I got a camera only for my outdoor to watch birds, which it's ever since my birds flew away, it's dead. So I don't know. I'm just not that interested in surveilling my house.
Right.
I'm like, I guess
But it
maybe
is a
if I
problem.
lived in the country, I might do it.
But it is a problem, and I think the judges are going to have to put that in the standing order that you can't be accessing cameras of a house that you're not in or anything like that. Like you can't put cameras on the property. I'm not even going to tell you about that. But let's allegedly, like we had a case one time, and she was a friend of mine, and the husband asked, "Can I put a camera in your tree and put one across the street at the neighbor's house in their tree?" Because technically she did have use and possession of the house. So he's like, "All right, well, I'm not going to step foot on the property, but me and the neighbor are buddies, so I'm just going to put a camera in the tree and then just watch her house." I mean, it was creepy. And it turned out there were some criminal charges that followed, not because of the cameras, but because of who was at her house. And he went over there. I think that they're going to have to address.
Alexis Drummond and her attorney addressed it, was filing this lawsuit for invasion of privacy for them putting the cameras in there and then stealing the dog. The dog, okay, so I think what happened was the attorney was in there when they took the dog, but they gave it to his cousin. Why would you keep that? Why would you take somebody's dog? Anyway, somebody takes my dog, that's going to be a problem.
Exactly.
That is going to be a problem. But the dog has been returned to her, but still, because especially, just taking it into the domestic violence realm, that is one way that domestic violence abusers do get at their victims is their pets.
Yes.
And they threaten to hurt their pets, take their pets, threaten to take the children, of course, as a weapon against that person as a method of controlling them. And so I can certainly see where, them coming into the house and videoing all this stuff and putting up cameras and taking the dog.
As an attorney, would you even volunteer to be there to do anything?
Absolutely not. No, I think that's...
I mean, if you need an escort, call the sheriff's department.
Right. Yeah.
And have a sheriff escort you. Don't as an attorney be in someone's house and taking animals and putting up cameras. That's insane.
Well, and I doubt she did the legwork, but she was there.
Right. Still, you're an accomplice.
Well, and I just...
Guilty by association.
Of course, now, these are people, I have to imagine, that they're being paid very well. This guy has a lot of money.
Well, and maybe she has a reason why she was there. We have to find out.
Right. I mean, we don't know all the facts, but I do, as a practice, I do not typically go to my client's home.
Yes.
I just, unless I needed something like a visual that I needed for trial or something like that, that I needed to see it to understand it, even then I would probably be okay with pictures.
Right. And then that would be a situation where your client would be there present with you that has possession of the house or something. That was a weird scenario. Like, he wasn't even there.
Yeah.
But
I do think the cousin was there.
Yeah.
The one that ended up with the dog for however long she had the dog.
Yeah, don't say my dog. There's probably going to be some new charges. Me, if you take my dog.
The line has been crossed.
Yes,
the line has been crossed. So, when there's a domestic violence allegation pending or alleged, there are different things that happen in the divorce. First, you may have a protective order, like we've discussed. So you have that going on, but you also have to separately file for divorce if you're wanting to get a divorce.
Right.
Then you also may have like an emergency order where, as an example, I don't know if they did this in this case, but as an emergency order to have her have sole use and possession of the house and have him go stay somewhere else. Because it does not seem that these parties could be in the same location together. And probably with his criminal charges, although the criminal charges in Alabama, he went in, he bonded out the same day. I think
And the protective order, you could also just give her use and possession of the house, but also give her sole custody for a minute until he has a hearing.
Correct.
And give her some other temporary relief, such as financial relief.
Right, like child support, alimony, he's got to pay certain bills, that kind of thing.
Right.
In a case like this, I would expect that he would probably have to set the bill for just about everything.
Yeah.
And that, it seems that she may have use and possession of the house, but without seeing the documents, we don't really know that.
Right.
Yes. But, I mean, she's the one that has the infant. But he's also of the ability that he could certainly, I'm sure, buy her another house or rent her a place if he needed to. Which is not always the case because this is a sort of a special scenario. I mean, most of the time you're dealing with regular people who have regular jobs and they don't have unlimited funds that they can, move somebody into another location. But I would expect in a case like this, she would probably have exclusive possession of the house and he'd have to go stay somewhere else. Probably at one of his multiple other homes that he probably owns.
And I would think probably after the incident that the child was present when he was showing out, he probably doesn't have any visitation right now. Or at the very least, it's supervised by someone.
Right. And in a case like that, where you have this kind of evidence, I would certainly ask for either no visitation or supervised, strictly supervised sight and sound, meaning the supervisor has to see all interaction between him and the child.
So when they go, because I know you do criminal stuff too, so when they have this, let's just say there are in this case too, there are criminal charges pending. They've been arrested, not found guilty yet, but there are criminal charges pending. When they go to court for the TPO, how do you handle that? Because you don't really want to talk about the case because you don't want to mess up your criminal case.
Right. So if my client was the one that had the criminal charges, I would more than likely advise them not to testify whatsoever in the TPO hearing, because anything that's said in the TPO hearing is under oath and then can later be used in the criminal proceeding.
Right.
So, I'd tell my client, you need to take the fifth on this.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? That means you're probably going to have a TPO issue.
Right.
Because only one side's evidence is coming forward. That being said, there's going to be some interaction between the TPO and the divorce case. So I wouldn't expect a judge to say, okay, I'm going to grant this TPO and he cannot see his child for a year.
Right.
That is a very
And
unusual remedy.
Well, do they sometimes, let's just say, hypothetically, let's just say you're representing the defendant. So there are criminal charges pending, you represent the defendant, you don't want them to testify in the TPO, but you also don't want a TPO entered because there are ramifications that come along with that. You have to turn over your guns, it goes on a registry, all that. So ultimately, you don't want a TPO against you. So let's just say you don't want them to testify, you don't want the TPO, but there is a divorce filed. Sometimes the judges, they would just enter an order in the divorce case, like some sort of temporary order restraining them from each other, but then not granting the TPO. So that's off the table. If there's an order entered in the divorce, that kind of restrains them from doing certain things.
Right. So a lot of times we do, a negotiation, and that's what I'd be trying to do in this case, is say, okay, we'll consent to a restraining order where he has absolutely no contact with Alexis and let all the other, issues be determined in the divorce case.
Right.
So, although I would probably, if I was her attorney, I'd want a DPO, even if it just applies to her.
Right.
Because he does not seem like someone who should have a firearm based on the videos that I've seen.
And I would agree in this case, but I'm just saying, like, in general.
In general, we try and negotiate some kind of mutual restraining order that can be issued in that case, or dismiss the TPO, but agree to a temporary order in the divorce case where the parties, have no contact with each other.
Right. And in this case, like we said, we can't actually tell when the incidents happened, but if he spent 45 days in a prison in Monaco and then he comes back here and there's another incident already, I would say he needs to have a TPO and he needs to have his guns removed and all of the above.
Right, because, you would think that the 45 days would have, straightened him up, or at least made him think, hey, this is a problem. Like, I need to deal with this, and I need to not put my hands on my wife.
Right.
At all. But it does not seem to have really deterred him in the way that I would expect it to. Other things that the domestic violence allegations can affect, parenting plans, parenting time. Like I said, if I'm her attorney, I'm asking for either no visitation or extremely stringent supervised visitation. And I think in this case, you would get it. Other than the fact.
Okay, so you kind of went over the protective orders, how it plays into custody and our parenting plans and supervised visitation. So let's go to the financial issues. How can the abuse affect the financial situation, such as like alimony, property division, attorney's fees? How does that play into that factor?
So obviously, well, not obviously, but there is case law in Georgia that says your behavior during the divorce can affect property division. Now, do our judges typically abide by that? Most times they sort of default to the 50-50 division.
Right.
Unless there's been some really egregious conduct, like hiding money, or in this case, abuse, a lot of alleged domestic violence, which, is on video. So,
And he was actually convicted of something.
right, he was convicted in France. I don't know what the burden of proof in France is, but it was a criminal conviction.
He's very,
It was
Quick.
speedy justice.
very swift.
Yeah, so yes, that can affect it, and the court can sometimes order, a more favorable division of the marital estate to the party, who's been the victim of abuse, or, like I said, if somebody's trying to hide financial, documents or, money. And I think that really ticks judges off more than anything is when you've got somebody who refuses to cooperate, won't answer discovery, lies in their, interrogatory responses, which happens a lot. But, we've all had those cases where either I've been on the client that had that client or been on the other side of it where they just don't want to turn stuff over.
Right. And that becomes a problem, which I know you've seen, I've seen, in situations where only one of the spouses know the information.
So, and that was another thing I was going to mention is that, ladies, gentlemen, if you're married, you need to know what's going on in your financials. You need to know what the other person has in their accounts, what y'all have in your joint account, what everything's worth. Because, why should you be in the dark about that? I mean, you're married, so what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Right? It's supposed to be, all in the same pot. So those are things that you should have knowledge about. And if you go into a divorce and you're the spouse who doesn't know anything financially, it makes it very difficult for me as your attorney to, find that information, because I know this may shock us all. But people do not and are not always truthful on their financial disclosures, on their interrogatories, and their requests for admission of documents.
You don't say.
I mean, I know you're shocked. But I mean, I do have clients, and I mean, God bless them. I mean, they come in there like, well, this is in court, and, it's being signed under oath, and, so of course they're going to have to tell the truth. And I'm like, not always.
Right, that's right.
They just don't.
And like we have these situations, and I just think it's very common for a lot of households for one person to pay all the bills and know everything about the finances and the assets and the debts and such, and then you have your client come in here and they're like, well, I don't know, I didn't do any of that. A lot, I see it, I saw it because I don't do domestic anymore, but I saw it a lot in households where the women didn't work. I would see a lot where like the men were the breadwinners and they would pay the bills, and it was like, we go back to this, to me it was like financial abuse, because you're like withholding information. We've had people like, oh, he just gives me an allowance every week. He gives you what? An allowance? Are you 13? Did you do the dishes? And so I think in situations like that, it becomes a problem because you don't even know what to ask for because you don't know what you have.
Well, and
you don't know what you're entitled to.
Right, and it also, obviously I can file for discovery. I can send out subpoenas, although, people think a subpoena is just like the easiest thing in the world. It's not.
Right.
And people don't always answer the subpoenas.
And can you imagine how much it would cost your client for you to subpoena every bank in town to see if there's a bank account there?
Correct.
Plus the bank charges you a fee, plus they're being charged an hourly fee. That could be very expensive.
Yeah, and
it's unreasonable. Like that's...
Yeah. I mean, it's just a lot of work. I think clients think that because we're attorneys, we can just pow, and then the information appears.
They think they have like this database, like, oh, let's just put his name in. Everything he owns and everything he's ever owned, it comes up in here. No,
that's not how any of this works. And the other thing is, if you don't know about finances, you don't know, if money's being squandered. I mean, I have cases where, one party or the other is, a gambling addict, or, just has an issue with spending in general, and you get into it, and they realize that there is no marital estate.
Right.
All they got is debt.
Yeah, and didn't know it.
And
all
had
these years.
no idea.
Right.
And I'm like, I think you have a responsibility to if you are not in a violent situation where you might not be able to without getting attacked, know the finances.
Right. What about, okay, strategically, what in a case, let's say that you are representing the husband in this case. Okay, he has these criminal charges. Strategically, what are you going to do when it comes up to it? Because you don't want him to talk about these criminal charges in his divorce case, right? Because you don't want him to incriminate himself.
Correct. So, I mean, for the TPO, if you had a TPO hearing, first of all, I'd try to negotiate a settlement or an agreement that we just enter a restraining order, dismiss the TPO, put a restraining order in the divorce case so that the parties have no contact with each other, and then let the judge decide, the visitation and the, support, alimony and child support issues. That's what I would try to do. But if we had to go forward with a TPO hearing, I certainly would advise my client not to testify, because anything that they said in the TPO hearing, would be under oath and can be used against them in, their criminal case.
And how would the criminal case, how would it affect the divorce case as far as, maybe timing? Is it going to delay it? Because he can't really talk about things. So does it delay your discovery? Does it delay your hearing?
I think first of all, it shouldn't delay your discovery, although he could take the fifth in his responses to discovery. I don't think that he could take the fifth on the production of documents, which is kind of a bigger piece. And I think the judge would be, a little hacked off if he tried to take the fifth about issues that really did not affect the criminal case. Like, what are a list of all your bank accounts and provide all your bank statements.
That has nothing to do with his criminal charges.
Correct, right. But I don't think you can force that.
Right.
When he's got a criminal case pending.
Right.
So if they really wanted to be jerks about it,
So it could cause a delay in time.
it could. And I think certainly you could ask to extend the period for discovery so that those criminal charges can be resolved. But as you and I both know, criminal charges, though in France, they're quite speedy. But in this country, and
It's like record time I've ever heard of it
Right.
being adjudicated.
it can take years. Years for a case to be resolved.
Divorce cases can sometimes take years as well.
Right. So it could certainly create a delay.
Okay. I guess let's talk about your myths here. Let's talk about some common myths that people have. The richer spouse always wins. How do you feel about that?
I don't think that's true. I do think sometimes they are at an advantage because they can hire, very competent counsel, and they don't have to worry about, the billing. If you've got unlimited funds, you don't have to worry about having 1-2 attorneys working on your case and spending a lot of time on your case versus the spouse who may not have as much, having to figure out how to pay for an attorney and figure out, getting an attorney at the same level that their spouse
is a disadvantage in some instances when you're the person that doesn't have the money.
Right, but I will say, you can also request attorney's fees up front. And I think in this particular case, he's got enough money that he's probably going to have to foot the bill for whoever her attorney is.
Right.
I would expect. But the problem with this case, too, and what I would anticipate, what happens a lot of times when you have one person who has a lot of money, family money, inherited money, gifted money, that it might be protected in certain ways and not part of the marital estate. And so even though this person is like incredibly wealthy, has, a $4 million house and has all these accounts,
The only thing to divide is what is marital.
right, it may not be marital.
Right.
And so then, you're really, at a disadvantage because what are you going to get?
Right. What about domestic violence only matters if there is a conviction?
I don't think that's true But you do have to have some level of evidence and proof. So a picture, a recording, a video, something,
Right.
to show that it happened. Because if all you have is what you are saying, and the police didn't come out, and you have no evidence, the other party's just going to say, "Well, that's not what happened."
Well, you don't necessarily have to have a police report, but you have to have something to corroborate your story and not just be a he said, she said type of situation.
Right.
And like we talked about, usually this day of time, there is a recording for everything.
I mean, and I mentioned before, I've had clients that they record everything. They record every conversation. They record every interaction. And then if you mysteriously don't have a recording of this particular incident, I think
Red flag.
it makes them more suspicious that, it didn't happen, or it didn't happen exactly the way you say it happened.
Right. And let's talk about equitable division. That doesn't always necessarily mean 50-50, right?
Right. So, family court is a court of equity. So that means essentially fairness.
Right.
So, equitable does not always mean 50-50. It can mean 60-40. It can be 70-30. Typically, judges lean towards a 50-50 split, especially in a long-term marriage, but they're only dividing what's marital.
Right.
So that's the only thing that's part of the pot. And then the other issue is, does the judge think one party's behavior is such that it would warrant deviating from that 50-50 split?
Right. Or maybe it's like, maybe not necessarily behavior too, but like one party has the ability to make a lot of money down the line. The other party does not. Would that also affect like the equitable division?
I think it would, but I think judges are leaning more and more towards, why aren't you working?
Right.
Why aren't you making money?
Right.
But I mean, ultimately, like say you have, for instance, a doctor
And a housewife.
right?
Doesn't
I
have a
mean,
degree.
right? Who doesn't have a
Right.
college degree? Obviously, he or she's gonna have the ability to make much more than the housewife or the
Right.
house husband. And I think the court has to take that into account. But that may not be necessarily in the division of the marital estate. It may be more in the form of alimony
Right.
and child support that the court sort of evens that up. But I do think courts are leaning more away from alimony because there's so many most households both people work.
So if you are doing a consultation with a client and you're preparing them for their divorce, and in this situation, you might have some delay issues because of the pending charges, what do you tell them to do? I know you mentioned so far you mentioned that you want them to document everything. You want them to have their records and keep their financial stuff and know what's going on. What else do you tell them to kind of do?
Document, document everything, write everything down, keep a journal somewhere that the other person might not get it.
So we talked about, like I always told my clients, they have all this evidence and these videos and recordings and pictures or whatever. I always told my clients, like, send them to us now or send them to your girlfriend. Send them a couple of places so that we have a backup, because if your phone, I don't know, I've had some accidents with phones where they ended up in water, or, it didn't back up to the iCloud, which, in my case, it wasn't evidence, but I lost some pictures that I had of my kids. But you want to keep that somewhere other than in your phone, because your spouse also might get your phone and delete your iCloud.
I've had so many clients come in and they had pictures and, they had it in the consultation, and then somehow something happened with the phone and it all went away, and you can't reproduce that. If it's gone, it's gone often. So yeah, you certainly put it on a jump drive, create a divorce email, which I've had clients do, where they just have an email for the divorce. And the other thing is, I would say you need to be organized. Like if you bring me this treasure trove of information and a grocery bag of papers and bank statements, oh Lord, nothing makes my heart palpate more than that. I'm just like, what am I going to do with this? Really, I'm looking at Diane. I'm like, what are you going to do? Because
Poor Diane.
right. It's just, try to be organized. And, sometimes my brain organizes information differently than other people's, my clients. And so, you know, that's another issue because they can't help that. I can't help that. So it's like,
Right.
but at least if I have it in some cohesive, file folder or, Google Drive link or something like that so that I can retrieve the information quickly.
My favorite clients were the organized ones that used Excel spreadsheets for everything.
Right,
With all of their
yes.
stuff together. And it costs them less money because they're not paying you however much you bill an hour to go through that. I
Right.
mean, it benefits them as well.
Yeah, and I do feel like people, especially when they're going through a divorce, especially when there's domestic violence, they've been a victim of domestic violence, that they can seem just kind of like scattered a little bit. Because their brain is kind of rewiring itself.
And their nervous system.
Yeah,
Probably.
they're dysregulated, whatever that word is, and so it can be hard. But as you said, it's going to save you money. It's going to save you time. And it kind of gives you something to focus on.
Yeah, it gives you a starting point too. You have and where you're going with it.
And if there's a account, Nate knows. Here's a statement from an account that he came to the house and I got a copy of it that he or she may have, and I need to know where that money is, what's happened to it, but if I have that and I have the account number and I have where it is, I know I can ask for it.
Right, and then you can also see if they don't disclose it to you, then you know
Correct.
it's there.
Correct.
What do you tell your clients if they are experiencing domestic violence while going through a divorce? What is your recommendation for that?
Well, certainly if you feel like you're in imminent danger, then you need to call 911. I mean, that's the number one thing. But also, I think you don't need to just call 911 for anything and everything. But if you truly feel in fear for your life and fear for your safety, you certainly need to call 911, and you need to be cautious. A TPO or a restraining order, it's a piece of paper,
Right.
It can't always protect you when somebody's dead set on doing something, the TPO or restraining order may not help you.
Right, I mean, we just had the situation in the Best Buy parking lot at a custody exchange, and he killed the mom and her mom. So the mom and the grandmother of the child right in front of the child. So
Yeah.
it is a piece of paper, but somebody knows. And, I feel like there are things, I feel like our counties, especially, like if there's a TPO here, I think there is a level of, they drive through your neighborhood. The police officers know, because in our counties, in Georgia, the police officer serves a TPO. It's not like a private thing. So, I mean, it goes through the sheriff's department. It's on the registry. I feel like they patrol, and there's a little bit of, there's a little more security for somebody that has a TPO.
Well, you have to be vigilant. I mean, I hate to say it, but you do have to watch out for yourself. You have to,
Yeah.
In that scenario, certainly cameras on the outside of the house for sure. Just that way you can show if somebody's driving by.
And an alarm system, maybe, so if somebody comes in your house after you've gone to bed, the alarm's going to go off.
Right. I mean, and those are the scariest cases, especially this case. I think the most recent incident, he's alleged to have strangled her, and studies on domestic violence show that's an escalating behavior, and that's the type of scenario, someone who exhibits that may end up, in a murder situation. And the problem we have is that we see a lot of people that say there's been abuse, there's been verbal abuse. And I don't want to say I don't believe that, but I mean, sometimes it's hard to distinguish, is this real or is this just a symptom of divorce?
Right.
And that they're both in conflict right now. And so you have to be really cautious about that. And judges, I'm sure, even more so, because you just never know when it's going to be the Best Buy parking lots.
Right. And I think they have to err on the side of caution. And I think as an attorney, you have to err on the side of caution too. I know that you have to determine whether you want to put your name on that paper and ask for a TPO, because there are some attorneys with a reputation that they just run and get a TPO for anything. And I know that you're not one of those people, but you also have to err on the side of caution when somebody's asking you to do that.
Right. And if I'm I feel like if I'm getting a TPO,
It's legit.
it's legitimate. And
Right.
and I mean, there's certainly attorneys have to watch too. I mean, domestic cases, a lot of times attorneys are the ones that become the target. So, I mean, I sometimes have to watch my back. And I've certainly had times where I was out in public, you know, with my family. I was at Target one time, and this guy, and he was huge. And I'd gotten like a TPO for a client against him. And he like came up to me and was like, you know, hey, PJ, how are you? I was like, oh my God. I mean, like, it freaked me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I mean, you know, we're not in a courtroom. We're in Target. I got my
Right.
kids here. So it can be very scary. And, you know.
Yeah, Kate had a really litigious divorce case one time, and the defendant had us locking our office door because he made quite a few threats. I believe he even went as to leave one on the voicemail one day. I was like, well, that wasn't really smart because now we have proof that you're doing it. Because, you know, he would like call from whatever, like star 60, whatever you put, star 67, whatever, and his number would be blocked. So he'd call and say these things, but we couldn't prove that he did it. And then one day he just, I don't know, I think he might have had a little drinky drink.
He forgot
And he left a very colorful voicemail. And so I remember that was probably the scariest case in the 20-something years that I worked for her. We locked the doors for months after that because he was just kind of a loose cannon. And he was known for his violent self and his scamming ways in Augusta. And I wasn't sure that he wasn't coming to get us.
Well, and I've certainly, like, at my office, had people, like, driving to the parking lot. And I'm like, oh, Lord.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, I think we had an instance one time where the husband was in the parking lot waiting for the wife to come out because he looked on her phone on her location because he was stalking her and saw that she was at the attorney's office and he waited on her to come out. I mean, there are some scary things that go on in family law.
Absolutely.
And just a heated divorce can escalate quickly and turn into domestic violence quickly.
I have been more scared as a family law attorney than I was as a prosecutor dealing with murderers, rapists.
Right, and as a criminal attorney, I'm sure you see some scary clients who've committed some pretty serious crimes, and I mean, family law is equally as scary.
Yeah. I've definitely been more afraid. Minus there was a riot at one time when I was a prosecutor in Tennessee. We had to lock ourselves in an office. That was a little bit frightening.
And that sounds frightening.
But we made it. We made it.
Well, I think that wraps it up and brings us to your family law fail of the week. Our favorite part.
We're back to Taylor Frankie Paul.
Hearsay.
She just can't help herself, okay? So, I think she posted it today, honestly, and it was on Instagram. And so she said, it was just a video of her in her car, and it says, I might have to keep quiet, but time doesn't. And then, like, in the written part, it says, what an offer over my dead body. Okay, so I'm like, are you talking about an offer that was made in your case? I mean, that's what I thought. I don't really understand that I might have to keep quiet, but time doesn't.
I don't either.
I don't. And then I'm like, well, I think maybe the offer in my mind, what I pieced together was the offer had a time period for it to expire.
Oh,
or
yeah.
something.
Like, okay, here's my offer.
And she was just gonna,
to
right, and she was just like gonna let it expire, which is kind of a passive aggressive way of saying no.
She just can't keep her mouth shut. She can't. She needs some
to
duct tape.
She needs to stop. I mean, it just seems so childish. And you've got 3 kids, and you know you're supposed to be this, like, you know, mom boss, mom talk, whatever. Okay, well, act like it.
She would be in our example in the family law world. She is an example of the client that you don't want to have because she can't keep her mouth shut.
No, I'd kill her. I think I'd kill her.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be quiet about some things, and she just can't.
Well, I know it's hard because she makes her living off social media, but I'm like, golly, just stop.
Just talk about anything other than this.
Right.
Like, you have 6.4 million followers. You can literally talk about anything. It doesn't have to be about your
do your dumb dances, or I don't know, like clean the house videos or whatever she used to do.
Oh yeah, the clean talks.
Yeah.
Or her little dance videos. I think that's what got her famous.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'd be fine with that. But I haven't seen any of the group really do any of the mom talk dances.
because she was Mom Talk, as I said.
Is
She
this-
was Mom Talk.
Is mom talk gonna survive this?
I don't know. I don't think it is. You know I'm still Team Taylor. I mean, she keeps on getting a couple strikes a week with me, but I'm still Team Taylor but that is back to my point about her. That is why I loved her originally, and that is how I became Team Taylor, is that she was so transparent and she's so honest and she always tells the truth. But in this situation, just get a piece of that.
Okay, but
Close your mouth.
here's the thing. I think that personality is great to be an influencer, mom talker,
Right.
whatever the heck her job is. As a client in a custody case, it's a nightmare. So
Nightmare.
those two things, it can be a good thing for one thing, but it's not good for the custody case.
Right.
So, it would be much better if she just let it all progress, and then when it's all over, then you talk about it.
Right.
But not right now. Or maybe write like a book or something about how to survive, custody.
And then I think we have one listener question. So let's get to that.
Sure.
Can I get divorced before criminal charges are resolved?
Yes. You can definitely get divorced before criminal charges are resolved. But the criminal charges could create, delays like we talked about, And if you're the one with the charges, you may not want to. Perfect. I mean, because until they're resolved, say the case gets dismissed, if you resolve your divorce case or your custody case while you've got, say, a simple battery or a battery pending, then your outcome is probably going to be a lot different than if you
Right.
waited until it was resolved and it was dismissed.
Right. Or
Um,
you were acquitted.
Right. And, a lot of times, around here, not in Columbia County so much, but in Richmond County, it takes a while for a criminal case
Yeah.
to come to an end.
Yeah, it does.
And most people don't want to have a divorce pending for, 3 years waiting on criminal charges to pass by. And certainly the judges, they're not going to say, okay, I'm not going to do anything on this divorce case because there's a criminal case pending.
Right.
That's not going to happen. Well, thank y'all for listening. And, today this case reminds us that divorce cases are not necessarily just about finances. There are a lot of different things at play, including domestic violence, including criminal charges, including the finances. So there's a lot of stuff going on in these cases, and they affect, people's everyday lives and the things that are most important to them, like their family, their children, their livelihood, and how they're going to survive in the future. So those are things to keep in mind when you think about family law. And hopefully you're enjoying our podcast. We're on episode 3. And if so, then like and subscribe and pass around the word that people need to be listening to Love and the Law.
Bye.
Cheers!
Okay.